Hello, everybody, and thanks for listening. My name is Dan Wunderlich. I'm a United Methodist pastor, and I want to welcome you to the MyCom Church Marketing Podcast. Last month, we talked about the power of in-person events in part one of my conversation with Hillary and Jason Demeo, the husband and wife team behind the design thinking firm We Are Curio. We introduced some key themes that will return in today's conclusion to that interview. So if you haven't listened to last month's episode yet, I would encourage you to pause, go check that one out first, and then come back. Today, in part two, we'll discuss a hallmark of their work, the artifact. We dig into the intangible quality of tangible objects, some practical and compelling ideas for a direct mailer, and why you might need a hobby. Thanks again for joining us, and here's part two of my interview with Hillary and Jason Demeo. Now, Hillary and Jason, a hallmark of your approach to your work is the concept of the artifact. And I'm probably going to oversimplify it here, but I define it as a tangible object or a creation meant to mark or represent an event or the idea the event is organized around. How would you guys define it? And how did you come to make the creation of artifacts such an important part of your process?
Yeah, it's such a great question. Yeah, I would say that for me, I think of artifacts typically as the end process of your creativity is the way that I especially define it in my practice as an artist, that there's this thing that you poured all of your ideas, similar to what you said, Dan, but you've poured all of your ideas, the meaning, the color, space, all of these things into something that is tangible, visible somehow, and it kind of becomes this embodiment of what you either want to happen or what you want people to experience. And I think they have powerful effects on people. I mean, even just like there's artifacts all throughout Scripture, monuments and things that people would build to remember things. And I think that maybe as I'm even just speaking, the importance of artifacts is remembering. So they help you remember what you're doing, what you're here for. So yeah, so I would say two things. It's the end process of your creativity, kind of the culmination, and then also they're there to help remind you of what you're doing and why you're doing it. So I would say we say digital artifacts and physical artifacts. I personally gravitate towards physical artifacts, but I think there is a website is a digital artifact. It's the end process of creativity that is here to represent an idea, to help you remember certain things, your logo, your brand, all of those things to me are artifacts and really, again, help tell the story of what you're doing.
That's so interesting. Recently, in a sermon, we talked about when Joshua had the people reaffirm the covenant after coming into the promised land. And it says that they set up this standing stone at Shechem. And if you Google standing stone at Shechem, there is the base of a very large stone in Shechem. And
Wow.
some biblical archaeologists will tell you this is what is left of that stone. Other people say it's other things. But, whether it is or not, the idea to me that this thing that was set
Yeah.
up as the people is still there. Not saying that my
Right.
church is going to do anything as significant as reaffirming the covenant with the nation of Israel after it going into the promised land, but being able to set up something like that, there's just a power there. And of course, like, we all love the ease and efficiency of digital. Like, I love that I can bring my phone or my tablet and I have my whole Kindle library with me. And so whatever I'm feeling on a plane ride, or which I haven't done in over a year, but whatever it is, like, as I'm waiting around, I could read almost any book I want. But yet there's also some books that, like, I'm going to read the physical copy. Like, there's
Right,
just something
right.
about holding the physical copy of
Uh-huh.
certain books. What to you are some of the intangibles? I mean, you've talked about this a little bit, but just, are there any more intangibles to a tangible object that you think are uniquely powerful?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm going to tell I'll try to keep it super brief. I just want to give two examples of maybe how this power works.
Yeah.
Because I don't know that I understand it totally, but I do think there is something there. One is I used to be a picker. I used to go and just find artifacts and sell them on Etsy. And I still kind of do that a little bit and love it, but it's not like a main thing that I do.
Right.
But I found an artifact. It said Demeo Pataccia. My last name's Demeo, which means like Demeo restaurant.
Mine is too.
Well, yeah. And so it's been hanging in my house. It's actually an old menu from an Italian place.
Yeah.
So it's been in my house for probably 7 years. I look at it probably every single day. I walk past it going into my bedroom. and I don't really, spend much time seeing it, but I've looked over it multiple times. We go to Italy, and we're on our third day there. We're in Rome, and we just get on our bikes and just go somewhere. We were lost in Italy, really. It was beautiful, it was wonderful. We're
Yeah.
going down side streets. We have literally no idea where we
Mhm.
are. And so we Hillary goes ahead of me. She goes down kind of like this sketchy road, and I'm like, all right, well, great. I'll follow you. We end at the end of the road, and we literally, what is waiting at the end of the road is a framed version of what I have at my house, which is
Oh
framed
my
too.
gosh.
The DeMeo Pataccia menu. It's the only one in the world.
The
No, it is. It's the
Yes.
only one in the world, and that is it. And so I didn't look up the address or any of these things before we
Wow.
went to Italy. And so this is just one example. You can read into whatever it is. The Spirit wove it. My subconscious mind had been looking at this address. Hillary's subconscious had been, and somehow we've been led there.
We stumbled upon the restaurant, and it
Right.
was just like, "Oh my gosh, we cannot believe that this is the same restaurant that
Wow.
the menu, not even in like was outside of our bedroom for years."
Yeah.
So, but yeah.
So, that's just one, like, kind of blow your mind idea. Maybe you've
Yeah.
had these things happen in your life. We have these things happen, I think, more often now, so I could tell a lot of them. Another one was I have a, Shepard Fairey poster in my house that says, "Make art, not war,"
Mm.
and I was not really 3 years ago an artist. Like,
Mhm.
I appreciated art, but I wasn't, like, actively painting. Well, I put that painting or that poster up at the end of my hallway, and every time I walked down the hallway, at the end of it, my eyes saw "Make art, not war. Make art, not war." And this is like for like a year, and I didn't do it as like, okay, I'm going to become an artist, but I think just me seeing it over and over and over again, I got into the studio where
Mm.
that was and started making art, not war. And I just think that I haven't totally figured it out yet, but there's this reminding, and then there's this like subconscious pull that artifacts have on you, that I don't even know that I can describe. So those are just a couple examples. And then the third thing that I had is just in my mind was that, like, in a way, Jesus was an artifact.
Mm.
Like God, it wasn't good enough for God to just be like this intangible,
Mhm.
I don't know where God is, where God ends, whatever. But it's like, this is a tangible artifact. This is me. This is
Yeah.
like
Mm.
in the flesh form that you
Mhm.
can learn from, you can see.
Mhm.
So anyway, I just think that, like, there is something really powerful about artifacts that begin to set your
Oh,
subconscious
yes.
into motion.
Totally.
And I think if we only approach church, speaking, all of this stuff from like a linear fashion, you can teach people linear information, but you're not trying to inform people, you're trying to form people. And so I think that you want to not only give them facts and things and information, you
Mhm.
also want to give them their subconscious food and energy to grow into what God would want them to grow into. So using artifacts to do that, I think, is a piece that sometimes maybe people neglect.
Man, that's so good. The thinking of an artifact, as an incarnation. There is
Mm,
Yeah.
the
mhm.
incarnation, which is the ultimate artifact, but that
Yep.
all of these things become an incarnation of our church. And that leads me amazingly to this next question. This is just flowing so great. Our editor's going to be thrilled. But
Yeah.
when we bring this back directly to church marketing, hey Josh, how you doing, buddy? One of our topics of conversation in our last episode was direct mail. Of course, Facebook ads, we've talked about those a ton. Advertising in digital spaces, it's cost effective. You can target, but the truth is, there's so much competition, and with ad blockers, and really, I mean, I'm sure you guys are the same way. Like, I can recognize an ad on social media,
Totally.
and I know how to scroll past it without engaging with it. I've just begun to wonder if like a physical mailer could provide even just a bit of that artifact experience that you've been talking about. And of course, there's the old school things like the church coffee mug or other kinds of swag that you can put your church logo on. But of course, when you think of it as an incarnational artifact, it kind of raises the level of, it's not just a
Yeah,
church coffee mug, like it's everything that comes with a what we do in and around our cups of coffee. The challenge, of course, is again, like a physical mailer is more expensive than a digital ad. So
right.
kind of, again, balancing the pros and cons of all these things, is there any advice you would give or a set of questions you would encourage people to think about if they're weighing creating some kind of mailer or physical object to serve as a marketing artifact?
I was thinking about this prior to our call. I think that what you're trying to transfer in a marketing piece from your church is your church's energy or your church's unique
Mm,
DNA to the
Personality, yeah.
personality to the people of your community. And so when having this conversation or brainstorming around what it is that you want to mail or give away, I really pose that question of what makes our church unique. So instead of just
Yeah,
putting your logo on a mug, it's like, is there a phrase that your
yeah.
church says a lot? Is there something like funny that, like, a lady in the church always says when she greets people at the front door, and that's like
yeah,
what somebody is going to hear when they come to your church for the first time and they come back? Or could you write like even handwritten cards and like
Hmm.
a couple
mm,
small groups, like
Yeah, from the
actually,
lead pastor.
sure,
That would
but
get no, I'm just saying it
yes,
doesn't have to be.
yes,
I'm just saying if you're thinking like outside of the box and you're like, wow, the lead pastor of the church wrote me a letter.
yeah,
Like that
yeah,
would be interesting. That would be a
absolutely.
purple cow
Yeah.
in Seth Godin's
yeah,
Yes, and so
term.
yeah.
what is it? Because I think what we need to start asking ourselves is what is the point of this piece of marketing?
What's the point?
And
That's
if
great.
people actually responded, what would you do with them? Like, are you prepared if they show up? Like, what is your welcome gift like when they come? Or what is your welcome experience? Or
Artifacts, yeah.
what happens if they do show up and if you do have a new family come to your church? So the question is, sure, market, but why are you trying to market? And what are you going to do if the
Mm,
Spirit brings these people into your spaces? And are you prepared to steward their time and their spiritual curiosity? And so we have to be prepared because you might only get one shot with somebody's spiritual curiosity. And if they come, have you made a place at the table for them? And are you prepared with something that says, hey, first time guest, we really are ready and we're uniquely excited about you and your family, or, you being here. And this is how we're ready. And I think once we've prepared those spaces, then we partner with the Spirit in actually getting people into our spaces.
Yeah.
Because I really think it's a stewardship thing, but it's really thinking uniquely about what it is that you could send out or physically give that's going to stand out. But if it comes from the identity of your church, then that's what actually catches people's eye when they get it.
I was gonna
uh,
add too that
yeah.
like how does it transfer the energy and identity of your church, and then also how does it actually bring value to that person,
Yeah.
like what value are you bringing? If it's just your marketing, it's like, okay, this is informational value, I know what this church is like better, and if I want to go to church, maybe I'll check that out.
Right.
But like I would challenge you to think like, okay, what can we do that this artifact would bring value to their life? So if there's a card that you're sending, you're like, maybe like there's three check-in questions, and you
Uh-huh.
give like a spiritual practice that they can do. Hey, we've all been hit by this pandemic. Here's how to do a 15-minute meditation that will help you calm down, breathe, be more connected, whatever.
Hmm.
Or like if you're saying like a cup or something, Hillary said like a phrase or something, but like maybe there's some meaning to the cup where it's like, this cup represents 5 minutes that you're gonna take a break, or what.
Hmm.
I don't know, but it's just like trying to take those artifacts, and artifacts I think have to have meaning supplied to them, or
Yes.
they're just like, I don't even know that I would call it an artifact.
Yeah.
I would call it something
Just
else, just
material.
a
Sure.
material.
Yeah.
Mm,
It becomes an artifact, I think, when
And as I,
you have imbued it
hmm,
with meaning,
hmm,
and
with purpose.
an artifact, it becomes a work of art,
Yeah.
in a way. So
Yes.
yeah,
that's so interesting because I think a lot of us are creating that kind of content online. Like we're
Yeah.
doing,
yeah,
we're internalizing this idea that church marketing on Facebook can't just be show up here at this time, but we're doing things like, hey, are you experiencing anxiety? Here's 3 questions you could ask. But
yeah,
like, what if that showed up in your mailbox and it was
Right.
on a postcard that was tastefully designed and printed on
Uh,
paper that felt good, or like, here's
yeah,
5 questions to ask at your dinner table tonight. Like
yeah.
yes,
uh,
yes,
That's
Or
man,
like
you guys are
this
like, my
30-day
hamster's
challenge.
running really fast right now.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and, like, what if you also, like, partnered with, like, a local coffee,
Yeah.
and then you also gave, like
yeah.
it was like a free cup of coffee on our church, and then,
Yeah.
think about these questions when you're there, and, like and
Yes.
if you're ready to come to a spiritual experience, we're here for
This
you.
is genius.
But it's like,
It's a
yeah, this
win for the coffee
yeah, it's
shop
like
because
a
they're getting free marketing.
right,
People are
it's
coming
like
Yeah.
in, coffee costs nothing to them.
yeah, and it's like a power of like you're saying, this postcard, it catches people's eyes, and you also are the spirit of generosity. So it's like a free cup of coffee, even if you don't necessarily care if they
Like,
come,
wow.
because you care about being a neighbor and people like being less stressed in your community. And so it's like, wow, this church is generous before I
Yeah.
ever even walk in their door.
Mm,
Like there's something unique about them. Maybe I'll
yeah.
come. So
Church is always asking me for
yeah,
money.
wow, they're giving me a free cup of coffee. And so and I bet you there's a study on how likely that they'll actually use it might be low. So you're actually not
Yeah.
spending a ton of
Right.
money. You're doing drip at cost with a
Right.
local coffee shop. It's like I think that
Breakage.
we just have to be creative with these opportunities of what is it that you really want, like where do you want human flourishing to happen, and how do you want to start that formation with somebody even before they ever come in your doors?
Hmm.
That's great. And let me just say, like, finding that partnership with a local coffee place is amazing. And I just want to share one small pet peeve of mine is when churches send out a card that's like, join us on Sunday. We'll give you a free cup of coffee when the coffee's already free. Like, I get that you had to pay for it to brew it, but
Right.
people see through that as soon as they walk in, like,
Oh,
anyway,
Yeah.
totally.
it's just
Yeah.
a
I
little
I
pet peeve of mine.
mean, I just
Yes.
wrote down, like, honest.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, truth.
you said it earlier
Yeah.
too, but it's like, people I think are over the age of, like, marketing BS, and it's like the
Yeah.
church is a bad perpetrator of it sometimes,
Yeah.
and I think the more honest you can be with people, I think that you're gonna have a better experience. So, anyway, just be honest, be intentional. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I want to close by asking you, Jason, a bit about your art. We mentioned in the intro that you are a painter. You talked about just kind of stumbling into it a few years ago.
Yeah.
Most of your projects that I'm familiar with are quite large and they are definitely abstract, but at least for me, they're more accessible than some of the abstract art I've seen. And
Yeah.
as I followed your work, it's really been interesting to watch you evolve. Like you started pretty much like straight painting, you moved to some pouring techniques. If anyone is a fan of music, you did some artwork for the band Sleeping at Last,
Mhm.
and some of your recent stuff, you've really incorporated mixed media and textures. One of my favorite ones had this inset in the middle of the
Mm.
canvas that was red and it had gold leaf around it, so there was depth even just in this
Right.
sort of like what seemingly is a 2D painting. You
Yeah.
told us a bit about how you got into it, and it sounds like it is a natural expression of your love for the tangible. But maybe tell us how that has fed creativity in the other parts of your life, so that it might encourage some of our listeners to pick up a hobby or something that they can do that feeds into both work and personal sort of health and mental health.
Yes, that's, such a great, idea. I'm a hobbyist. If I if I didn't have to make any money, I would just do all hobbies. I'd
Mhm.
be into tennis, I'd do painting. I would just like I just love, starting new hobbies. I wanna do piano or I wanna do this. There's always something that's starting in my life. But painting has really, I mean, the way that it started, I started this thing with like pretty much just like my friends was like, hey, let's make a 10 goal. It's just at the beginning of the year. What are your 10 goals for the year? And one of mine, this is like, 3, 4 years ago, was to make 10 paintings. I had consumed a lot of art my whole life. I've gone to galleries, I've read a lot about art. And I kept saying to myself, oh, yeah, abstract art, like I could do that. And
Yeah.
everyone does this to something at some point in life.
Right.
You're like, I could probably do that. And the answer is you probably could. Just but you're not doing it. You're like, I could be a decent piano player, but I'm not taking lessons. Like, so I felt that like sense of I guess it's conviction a little bit, where it was like I was just taking in so much content, consuming so much art
Mhm.
content that
Mm.
I was like, I just need to like create. If I'm going to consume this much content of something, I need to do some sort of output with it. So I did 10 painting goal, and then I just kind of like went for it. And I was like, I'm going to make my own canvases. I'm going to stretch my own canvas. I'm going to do the whole thing. And really just became this experiment. I was going through a lot those 4 years ago. I mean, we're always going
Yeah.
through something. but like I was just like processing a lot of loss and lament and things that I was kind of going for, were helping me like the painting was helping me process those things. I'm an introvert. So it had a profound effect on my mental health. I didn't start it to become like a painter or someone who sells in galleries and things like that. But the momentum just picked up, and I did my first friends and family show that year. And like, just, I mean, it was just special. Like, there's so many people affirming, like, this is a part of your identity. Like, this is something
Yeah.
you should do. So started taking it more seriously. And yeah, now I'm in a couple galleries, one in Houston, one in LA. But really, I mean, sure, like I want to make money with it, and that's like great. But it really, I want to keep it kind of as a sacred practice that I'm kind of alone, with the spirit, with my own thoughts, and sharing the things that are on my heart, and then letting other people interact with those. So for me, it really is a spiritual practice. It's helped me just become a better, more whole person. So yeah, so I would encourage whoever's listening. It doesn't have to be painting, but some sort of artistic endeavor, I think, is
Physical.
really powerful for people. Yeah, physical, I think, is
Mhm.
really good.
Well, Hillary and Jason, personally, it's been great to catch up with you. And then also as the host of the show, thank you for all that you've given to our listener base today, all of our co-laborers in the work of the gospel. And kind of lastly,
Yeah.
how could folks look you up and connect if they'd like to see your work, the work of We Are Curio, or the art? What are the best places to find and connect with you all?
Yeah, I mean, easiest, we're pretty attentive to Instagram. So at We Are Curio is the that side. At the Demeos is our personal side, which we share stuff there. And then at JSpace, JASPACE.art,
Mhm.
is my painting side. So that's oh yeah, and then another one. We are like 12 Instagrams right now. It is at iRocks Living. What we're doing there is really this human-centered stay. We're creating an experience in Asheville, and it's going to be pretty amazing. It's almost
Mhm.
finished. So we're trying to really, in a way, to kind of bring this all full circle. iRocks is an environment that will be filled with artifacts
Mhm.
that embody our human-centered design. So
Yeah.
come stay at iRocks, and you'll get a great taste of all the things that we just talked about.
Awesome. And that is IROX, correct?
It's actually at iRocks Living, is the Instagram,
Or
Awesome.
email.
or
Or
yeah,
Well, Hillary and Jason, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it.
totally. Thank you, Dan.
Yes,
Great
appreciate
talking to
you.
you.
And now, listeners, we want to hear from you. Are there any artifacts that you might be able to put in the hands of your community that helps build a connection and tell your church's story? Perhaps something a bit more personal than the trusty church logo coffee mug? Email us at podcast@umcom.org, and we just might share your thoughts or stories on a future episode. And you can, of course, use that email, podcast@umcom.org, to send us any feedback or topic suggestions for the show. We always love hearing from you. As always, the easiest way to support the show and help other church communicators like yourself find it is by sharing this episode with your friends and colleagues, and by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or whatever service you're listening to right now. And did you know that United Methodist Communications is celebrating 80 years of ministry? Your support ensures that the latest denominational news, dynamic stories, and informative articles will continue to connect our global community. Make a tax-deductible donation today at resourceumc.org/giveumcom. That's GIVEUMCOM. Thanks again for listening to the MyCom Church Marketing Podcast.